We are back. It is Colts Corner with myself, Kevin Bowen, and now 32 teams into the offseason. Eddie Garrison is across the way. Super Bowl is complete. Dud?
Absolutely.
Should we appreciate defensive football more?
I think so. That was just a domination.
It was.
By Mike McDonald's crew.
Boy, it was, to say the least, yeah. That unit deserves the MVP. Then maybe both kickers. Give it to Jason Myers and Michael Dixon, and then give it to Kenneth Walker after that. So, yeah, Seattle's defense just – and really, you look at their front seven, Eddie, 5 of the 7 guys I think have already been on another team. It's impressive, kind of the makeup of that group as well. So today's podcast will focus on a little bit of Hall of Fame right out of the gate just because it's timely, and then we really do these every February. We get into the back-to-back pods where we do evaluations of the GM and the head coach. And so the good and the bad, and we want to focus on both of that, our wins and losses, however you want to look at it. From Chris Ballard, we'll do this week, and then we'll do Shane Steichen next week. And, Eddie, it's kind of wild. 2 weeks from tomorrow, we're at the Combine.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how we're going to get there. And I'm kind of ready for it. I feel like the Colts have had one of the quieter off seasons, really, of any team. And I want to say the franchise tag window opens up a week from tomorrow. I saw some reporting out there. George Pickens is likely to be tagged. I believe Schefter had that. Mm-hmm. And I find that interesting because Alec Pierce is probably the top wideout that could hit the open market if indeed Pickens gets tagged. So just some things that, we always keep an eye on around this time of year. But anything Super Bowl related before we get into Adam Vinatieri and no Reggie Wayne?
I don't know how to view how the Colts played Seattle in Seattle after watching that Super Bowl. Because, it was right after Phillip Rivers came off the couch, and, the Colts had somewhat success on stymieing the Seattle offense. And then last night, you have to wonder, if Jackson Smith and Jigba is fully healthy during that game and he doesn't exit with, getting tested for the concussion, that foot issue, the Seattle's offense put up more than what they did. If Sam Darnold doesn't look like a pumpkin in the first half. And, the other thing, too, is we can talk about this for a little bit. It's just how far off the Colts are in comparison to Seattle, because when you watch the Seahawks, they were winning at the line of scrimmage defensively with just bringing 4 guys. And then all of a sudden they start, bringing the exotic blitzes. You bring Devin Witherspoon on numerous blitzes, and New England had no answers to pick it up. And their coverage was just absolutely sticky and not giving Drake May a lot of windows to throw the ball. And when you marry the two together, you get the result like they did yesterday, where you're forcing New England to pass, taking the run out of it because you stop the run, and you just dominate the way that they did on that side of the ball.
Yeah, when you get into these, hey, we played the team in the Super Bowl during the regular season, is that an indicator of who we are? Is it not an indicator? I feel like I've always kind of said this, and I even said this during the Colts start to the season. The 17-week NFL grind is insane.
Yeah.
162 games in baseball, you feel like you probably have different iterations. I feel like the same thing is true in the NFL over 17 weeks.
Yeah.
Even though the sheer number isn't, the same as obviously 162. And obviously in that game, the Colts probably got one of their best defensive performances, if not their best of the entire season, until the final drive. And that's kind of the outliers where I would go with. That to me is the difference. And, we've done this before, Eddie. The Colts beat the Kansas City Chiefs in 2022.
Right.
And the Colts won 4 games that year. So it's there can be, I think, outlier performances over the course of an NFL season for great teams. And for bad teams, you can have the surprise win here or there. It's more of, consistently, are you stringing things together? And what did we find out about the Colts based off that Seattle game? That defensive performance was the fluke. When you look back on that game in mid-December. And, one thing I was thinking about on the way in this morning, when I think back to quarterbacks running for their lives in the Super Bowl, I think of Mahomes against the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And I saw a stat where Seattle had double the amount of pressure on Drake May last night than Tampa Bay had on Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl. That to me is whoa, you know? And I thought Drake May, when he had opportunities, like they had that 3rd and 1 in the third quarter where, there was still 9-0, 12-0 game. I mean, hell, it was 12-0 until the start of the fourth quarter. You're only one score away from making it interesting. And, he missed that. If I were him, I'd be playing up the shoulder injury. I don't know if it's, I saw he admitted after the game he got a injection before the game started, but I thought he missed some layups for him.
Yeah.
When he had some opportunities as well. Should we get into Hall of Fame stuff?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to wrap up, and then you're going to make that transition. Adam Vinatieri, or as I forget who the announcer was, Vinatieri, used to call him back in the day, is chosen into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Reggie Wayne did not make the final cut, didn't even make the final 10, according to Mike Chappell, who would know, because Mike Chappell from CBS 4 and Fox 59 here in Indianapolis is a Hall of Fame voter. Kevin, your thoughts on Vinatieri making it into the Hall of Fame and year number 2 of being on the ballot, and Reggie Wayne once again being left out?
Yeah, let's start with Vinatieri. Beyond deserved. I thought he was the first ballot deserved. First off, most points scored, most field goals made, and then the clutch. When you have the double aspect of it as a kicker, I think that's what stands out. I don't know if I'm giving Jason Myers MVP for last night. Don't get me wrong. He obviously made kicks are important. The furthest kick was 41 yards, and did he have one meaningful kick in terms of end of half, end of game, right before the 2-minute warning? Not totally his fault. I would have given the MVP to the whole defense, which I don't think you're allowed to do, but whatever. So that's what I think really stands out about Vinatieri's career.
Wet Blanket Bowen back at it.
Huh?
Wet Blanket Bowen back at it.
The longevity of Vinatieri's career. It's funny. I think the hardest kick he made, a lot of people point to the Tuck Rule game. Do you remember the snow game with Buffalo in 2017?
Yeah, I do.
He made an extra point late in that game to force it into overtime. And I think I don't know if he said that directly. I feel like that's the best kick he's ever made, considering the snow was falling at that aspect of the game there. So I was pleasantly surprised that they put 4 in. I was a little nervous Breeze and Fitzgerald would eat up so much of the vote. I didn't know if they'd have room for 2 more, but they did with Luke Kuechly and Vinatieri. As far as Reggie Wayne is concerned, Eddie, I don't know when he gets in. I mean, I hopped on your guys' show on Friday, and Jake Query did the very Jake Query question of how old will Rosie Bowen be when Reggie Wayne gets into the Hall of Fame, and I was like, damn. That's a good question. Hell, I'm a little nervous. I'll be thinking about it or driving at that point. I just, you broke it down. So basically you get to 15 finalists, then you cut that 15 to 10, then you cut that 10 to 7, and then you cut 7 to 5. Or, excuse me, you cut 7 to the class, I should say. Class is a 4-man modern era class this year. He's not at 7, and he wasn't at 10. And I think in that room, Torrey Holt is viewed above him. And look at next year's class. Gronk, Adrian Peterson, and Big Ben.
Right.
Are they all 3 first ballots?
I don't think all 3.
Probably 2. So, again, is Torrey Holt getting in next year? Because I don't view him, to be clear. I view the room views Torrey Holt as above Reggie Wayne.
Right.
And I know the Peter King clip was going really viral last week, and, to kind of use the Peter King example. And to be fair to Peter King, I think there's a lot of people in the room that feel that way about Reggie Wayne. They just don't say it as publicly as he did.
Right.
First off, he brought up the highlight reel at one point, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is not a SportsCenter top 10.
Yeah.
No, it's about raw numbers and whether you want to throw in longevity, whether you want to throw in kind of the clutchness aspect of these athletes, whether you want to throw in team awards, that's all fine and well. But to me, it's not just a bunch of Calvin Johnsons to make highlight, or Odell Beckham that just makes a bunch of one-handed grabs. I don't need to see that in a Hall of Famer. And if you really want to get technical with Reggie, go pop in the Orange Glove game, where against a Hall of Famer in Charles Woodson, he does that. Mm-hmm. Or go back to 4th and 2 in the 2009 season, one of the biggest regular season games in NFL history. And who makes the game-winning touchdown after the Colts get the stop on 4th and 2? It's Reggie. And that was not some easy catch by any means. It wasn't the Super Bowl touchdown that he had. And, if you want to look at life with Marvin and Peyton versus without, Marvin got hurt in that 2000 and it was either 7 or 8 season, Eddie. He was limited to like 4 or 5 games, and Reggie led the league in yards without having that sidekick.
Right.
I just, that those aspects to his game, I think are just being really overlooked in it. But having said all that and whatever vouching for him, I don't get the impression that he's going to that Hall of Fame anytime soon. And wide receiver, unlike Frank Gore at running back, Eddie, we're going to just have better wideout resumes because that position is going to continue to grow. The counting numbers with those stats, whereas running back, you're not going to get that. I mean, sure, you're going to have your Derrick Henrys, and we'll see what happens with Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley when it's all said and done, but you're not going to get that as much at the running back position as you are at wideout. So those are just some Hall of Fame thoughts.
The other thing that I would say too is that you're penalizing a player for a situation he had no say on. Like, you're going to penalize Reggie Wayne just because they had Peyton Manning. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily Reggie's fault. He didn't have any, opinion on where he got drafted.
No, and again, okay, if you really want to nitpick that, what happened in 2012 and in Andrew Luck's rookie season? Marvin's gone, Peyton's gone. Again, if you want to play the Marvin card, okay, what happens when he gets hurt in that 2007 or 8 season there? So that's where I would just disagree with it. I'm not a big believer in if you waited long, then you should jump the line. I'm like, no, to me, you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not. So I don't want to rant and rave too much more about it, but I wanted to make sure that we snuck that in. Shout out to Adam Vinatieri. Obviously, beyond deserving. Again, to me, should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, but nonetheless, cool to see him. He looked very Zionsville daddy last night on the field. Looked like he was going to Bubs in Zionsville. Yeah,
that afterwards. 2007 season for Reggie, 104 catches, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns. Luck's rookie year, 106 catches, 1,350 yards, 5 touchdowns.
He led the league in receiving yards. In that 2000, you said it was 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great Colts team with Marvin out.
Yeah. And that's not even factoring in, as you mentioned, all the postseason success that he had as well. Transitioning now to the Colts general manager, we evaluated, who did we evaluate last week?
Well, last week we did Richardson. We did the deep dive. So, we'll do Ballard and Steichen these next 2.
Yep. So next week we'll do Shane Steichen. This week evaluating Chris Ballard, 9 seasons as the Colts general manager. This is available on 1075thefan.com. Do you want to start with the good? You want to be Mr. Positive today, or you want to start with the ugly?
Yeah.
We'll start with the good. In the 9 years for Chris Ballard, drafted offensive hits. We'll start there.
There's no denying that. First off, he's drafted a ton of offensive personnel that's really key to the team right now. Let's just start very blanket in terms of the starting lineup. And that unit, this past year finished top 10 in scoring. And I think for the most part, you look at the individual pieces on that offense and you would point to them being pretty good players. Obviously varying degrees, but whether it's Taylor, whether it's Warren, whether it's the wideouts. You drafted all the wideouts of major note, and then the offensive line. Across the board, it's 5 for 5 there in terms of drafted with Ryman, with Nelson, Bortolini, Gonzalez, and then Braden Smith or Jalen Travis here moving forward. So, obviously, if you look at it in an individual year vacuum, I think it's an unquestioned win as well when he's drafted the offensive hits that he has had. And also, I think you could look at it a little bit big picture too and believe in many of those pieces on that side of the ball. So I think sitting here right now going into year 10, it's probably the biggest positive on his resume. It's just the amount of offensive talent that he has drafted.
Yeah. And then for you put this as a win getting Sauce Gardner, and on the piece on 1075thefan.com, you say, for me, the questions on the Sauce Gardner trade is more on the plate of Carly Ursay-Gordon, knowing the major long-term ramifications of such a move. But Ballard found a way with some serious resources leaving the building to acquire a player like Sauce, who is still in his prime and on a reasonable contract at a premium position. When healthy, he should give the Colts a really important piece. Hitting on successful cornerback draft picks has not been a forte of Ballard, hence the urgency when such a trade became possible.
Yeah, so I try to lay it out there in what you just read off, Eddie, of like the Sauce Gardner trade is complicated. Like, you obviously sent out 2 first-round picks. You sent out A.D. Mitchell. Like, there are a lot of aspects to the trade, but if you are just evaluating player acquisition, he was able to go out and get a high-level corner at the age of 25 who is on a reasonable contract. You know, I mean, that is, again, if you're just evaluating strictly off of a player acquisition,
right?
You know, you have improved a premium position.
Yeah.
That had not been a very frequent hit rate really at all in his tenure, particularly when it came to the draft. So now the complications are more so, as I pointed out here, the Carly Ursay-Gordon aspect of should she have greenlit it? Did Ballard, earn it? You can make the apples to apples to the current Pacers situation, Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
In trading for Ivica Zubac, and you look at the amount of draft picks, there are very similarities to the Sauce Gardner trade. Now, Kevin Pritchard's trade record is borderline brilliant.
Yeah.
And the Pacers were a half away from winning it all last year. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals the year before. They're in a very clear championship window.
Uh-huh.
Kevin Pritchard and Rick Carlisle are very accomplished. I mean, Rick Carlisle is a Hall of Fame coach, and again, Kevin Pritchard has helped build this team
and a champion
to a champion. Yes, so that's different than obviously the Colts, given their current situation. So
I guess Steichen technically is a champion, right?
No, Philly lost, right?
Did they?
Yeah, because he thinks about that game all the time. That's right. That was a great Super Bowl. That was the year before. Yeah, then they smashed Kansas City, whenever it was last year or 2 years ago. So yeah, that's again, if we're evaluating player acquisition, I would call this a win. Is it as crystal clear maybe as the other? No, and obviously we didn't see Sauce Gardner for very long, but I think in the small flashes of it and glimpses of it, some might say it's premature to call this a win. Obviously, you're struggling to find many wins in the Chris Ballard era, to be totally honest with you. So I had to remind myself at times, don't do this just because you feel like you need to fill up the win category because there's not many. But I do think this is a legitimate win. It's just there are some other pieces to the trade that organizationally, probably above Ballard, I don't think were as properly examined.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's kind of sad, Kevin, that we're sitting here and he's been here for 9 years, and on your list of the good for evaluating Ballard, that's it.
That's it. There's a lack of, well, I guess let's just get into the losses because I feel like the losses or the whatever, the bad of it, we'll probably explain it.
Yeah, number one on your list here is we'll start with the collapsing culture. A rather unfortunate yet consistent aspect of the Colts in this 5-year playoff drought has been the issues in finishing off seasons. Ballard acknowledged this issue during his end-of-season presser. Poor finishes have been there, no matter the head coach, throughout these 5 years without the postseason. Given the different coaches, are the persisting late-season problems more in the personnel assembled by the longtime general manager?
Yeah, it's actually a question I threw his way during the end of the season press conference, and he acknowledged it's a question he doesn't have an answer to. And when you look at the 5 years, Eddie, there are very different collapses. This past year, obviously, you had some injuries that contributed to it. I'm never going to completely ignore that. You also had 7 straight losses. You look back the previous year, really probably the Drew Lock game is what people remember the most about that. The year prior to that, 2023, they were in the best position in the final week of the season to, the win and get in the game against Houston. But still, in December of that year, you lose to Jake Browning and Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
And then you go back to 2022. Obviously, you had the massive collapse of another 7 straight losses with Jeff Saturday to end the season. Historical moments within that collapse. Dallas, the fourth quarter in Dallas, the second half in Minnesota. And then the first playoff year drought, 2021, of course, you had the Raiders and the Jags back-to-back week 17 and 18. All you got to do is win one. I think interim head coach, I think it was Bisaccia, if I'm not mistaken, with the Raiders. And then you lose to lowly Jags in Week 18. So, when I say collapsing culture, this is, again, kind of where I'm at of how much of this is just personnel. You've had 3 different head coaches over those 5 years. Is it purely a coach thing, or is it more just on the personnel that is assembled or the culture that's in the building under his watch? So I would put that as a loss right now. It's not like they've some teams backdoor their way into having a 8-9 season. They haven't done that. They don't play ascending football late in the year. I guess is probably the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it, because if you look at the overall success, Kev, they always come out, typically, at least under the Ballard era, they have struggled in September, figured it out in October, November, and the early part of December, and then the midway point of December to the start of January, it's all downhill.
Yeah, right.
They're in the bottom quartile.
Yep.
Still kind of big picture, the resume lacking. We've kind of hinted at it, Kev. Do you have anything else to add on that aspect of Chris Ballard there in terms of the losses?
Yeah, I mean, the resume is just it's the counting numbers, of course. It's the 0 division titles. It's the 1 playoff win. It's the 2 playoff appearances. If you want to point to, because I tried to do it a combo. I tried to evaluate the individual season and then also the entire resume for each of these. If you want to boil it down to this season, you did miss winning the division by 5 games and the wild card by 3.
After being up 8-2.
Right. I mean, those are
in the win-loss column.
Big numbers. When you boil down to it, I think it surprises some people by how many games you missed the playoffs by.
Yeah.
And then I didn't include this in the resume is still lacking, but you and I have gotten into this debate before, Eddie, and we brought up the Vikings GM a couple weeks ago. Some people evaluate the GM off of purely draft picks. Others evaluate more of the team results. Now, some do both, but when you say the resume is still lacking, again, I've pointed out the counting numbers, but right now you would call the Anthony Richardson draft pick a swing and a miss. So if that indeed happens, that is also a very, very ugly stain on the resume. Which, again, I think kind of falls into, when you evaluate a head coach, it's pretty much purely wins and losses. Whereas the GM, you can point to some individual draft hits or misses. Within that, there's no more precious pick than, 4 overall in his era. And obviously, that was a huge miss.
Yeah, it's interesting that you didn't put in here, like you mentioned in the wins, the drafted offensive hits, in the losses column, the drafted defensive misses.
Well, and that was my first one here in the losses. I do put in here more defensive retooling.
Yep.
So, and you could make the argument the defense has been probably more of his baby. Like, he really wanted a specific system. He really wanted, specific personnel to change. And I would say, by and large, that unit has underwhelmed. Now, especially here recently, in kind of the 4 or 5 year playoff drought that you're in here, it certainly has. And, basically, he's got to clean up his own mess, is how you would look up this defense. And we'll see how much cleaning up is going to happen. I've kind of set the over-under. If I said to you, Eddie, 3.5 new defensive starters for next year.
Ooh, under. The question mark would be Zaire for me.
See, I say a definite defensive end, a definite linebacker, and now it's, what about Javarius Ward? What about Nick Cross?
Yeah.
Is that how you get to 4?
That's true.
Now, some might throw in there another front 7. Could there be 3 new starters in the front 7?
Right.
That would probably have to be 2 linebackers and an end. I assume Buckner, Stewart, and Latu are starting.
Yeah.
So obviously a starter opposite Latu, and then to your point about Franklin, and then Jermaine Pratt, who is a free agent. So again, defensively, it's been a loss. And that's where, when we got into the Seattle-New England debate with the Super Bowl, Eddie, that to me is probably the one where I point more on, hey, what have the Colts not done right that these Super Bowl teams have? Yes, you can point to Darnold and May, but hitting on May is simply, do you hit on the draft pick or do you not?
Right.
Like, it's very black and white. You missed on Richardson, they hit on May. The defense, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, if you look at it, I want to say New England they spent a ton last year in free agency, particularly in their front. And they obviously reap the benefits. You know, I mentioned Seattle earlier. They have drafted talent. Witherspoon's a drafted talent. Murphy is a drafted talent. They've got some of those guys on the defensive side of the ball. But whether it's Julian Love, whether it's, a ton of those guys in the front seven, they have just played elsewhere. And they've identified well in the pro scouting business and brought them in. Whereas you look at the Colts situation, it's a defense that's routinely ranked in the 20s here in scoring.
Anything else you want to add here in terms of the losses to be determined?
No, I think that covers everything for me.
Well, one thing that I would add, this is more of a personal thing than anything else, was just the lack of urgency to address the quarterback position for the long term.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Because considering where the NFL is at.
I'm going to say probably some of the past ones. Again, I try to marry both, like career versus most recent season that just occurred. I'm sure some of my past ones probably had a little bit of that front and center. I think that's a good point.
You ready for Twitter questions?
Let's do it.
We've got 4 of them, starting with Colton. How would you feel about this offseason?
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
Oh. Maybe I didn't send you the entire question here because I feel like he adds a couple things. Let me throw these at you here. We'll go reverse.
Okay.
We'll pivot here as I fumbled that one.
Is this Walter White from Breaking Bad?
Looking through my DMs here. Okay, Colton says this. How would you feel about this offseason, Eddie? Don't resign Pierce and draft a wideout in round 2. Sign a cheap veteran safety instead of Nick Cross. Use the money you save for Alec Pierce and get a pass rusher. So 3 things. No Pierce, draft a wideout in 2. Get cheaper at safety, let Cross walk. Use the money from Pierce and go pass rusher.
Can hear you out on the safety part. Can't hear you out on Pierce. I just can't let him walk and keep Pittman at that number. I understand that Pittman's a big locker room guy. He's been a captain for years now, but to be paying him as of right now, as we record here at 10:30 on Monday morning, he cannot be your most expensive player with the lack of elite production that he has given you.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head at that. Boy, first off, I'm going to go here. Who is the rusher?
That was the third part of it.
The Trey Hendrickson thing is not younger, faster. If you want, we'll see what happens. There's some chatter out there at Cincinnati could just tag him. Is it Jalen Phillips? The Oweh who was traded from Baltimore to San Diego or to L.A., I kind of like him. I'll be curious to see what he garners on the open market. He's very intriguing to me.
Yeah, he had a good 24-25 season, and then he was struggling in Baltimore.
But then
he got traded, and then he was back to the 24-25 version of himself. Yeah.
Now, again, you've got some Baltimore history on your staff, so they might know a little bit more, whatever, backstory right there. You don't re-sign Pierce, and then you draft a wideout in round 2. It's the immediate hit on that wideout. Malachi Fields seems to be kind of the talk of the Senior Bowl, and he's got some similar skill set to Pierce. But again, I understand where you're coming from on this, Colton, but I don't understand necessarily that money is going where. I think you could create some cap space, be very competitive in the pass rushing market, and still bring back Pierce. Now, you're going to have to do some stuff. Don't get me wrong, to maneuver money there. Safety, I think, is the hardest debate. What do you do with Cross? And what's the safety market? That's a position that I feel like is underwhelmed every year in the market. But, then you see some of these situations play out, and all of a sudden these guys come in and impact. And New England, for example, that Craig Woodson, he had a great rookie season for him, and he was, 3rd or 4th round pick? It's is that a position that you can find a little bit more out of there? So, I just think if Pierce walks, it's a lot to bank on.
I know. I agree with you.
I don't think I'd be a fan of it, but I don't. I guess I think you can do a little bit more than what he's laying out here. But they're going to have to do things they haven't done before, i.e. with their cap situation.
Yeah. We'll get to Walter White's question. I don't think it's Walter White, but we'll get to Walter's question here in a minute. Sam is next. Sam states, I was listening to your Anthony Richardson podcast and your hypothetical with Daniel Jones re-tearing his Achilles. My devil's advocate would argue, do we even think Anthony Richardson would beat out Riley Leonard in training camp? I know Leonard had a solid first career start versus Houston, but he could run the offense more efficiently than Richardson, and that might be all Steichen would need compared to the up and down nature of Richardson's game.
Yeah, I guess it's a fair question, Sam. The thing about Richardson is we just saw so little of him this past season. If you want to play this out here, let's say Daniel Jones isn't cleared until training camp. I mean, I guess he could probably do some stuff in the spring, but let's just say that out. That allows you, 8 or 9 practices in the spring to do the Richardson and Leonard thing. Now, I think Riley Leonard's done a very nice job here in his small sample size, but I also can sit here and say, we are judging just a game and a half. Now, granted, one of those games he did play a great defense, at least for a half in Houston, but still, it is just a game and a half. So the small minority says we don't have the definite answer on Daniel Jones' torn Achilles, though. And that's where, there are some people, I don't think there's a lot of people, but I brought it up last week, Eddie, of you don't let Richardson walk because Jones isn't proven to be durable.
Yeah.
Sustainable, however you want to kind of pinpoint that. So, yeah, I don't know if we're quite there yet, Sam, of you just hand Leonard those keys and all of a sudden he's clearly above Richardson. I think it's a tad premature to go that route, but obviously the gap is closed. Certainly you would view that aspect to it. So, at the end of the day, it's $10.8 million. It's rich to, have him back, especially when you don't expect him to play at all there. Boy, it's kind of crazy how much Leonard did for himself in that Week 18 game, isn't it?
I know, right?
This question wouldn't even be thought of.
Well,
after that.
The other aspect we have to also remember is that Houston didn't play their starters for most of that game.
Right, for the second half. Yeah, starters weren't there until halftime, which, I thought he did a nice job in the first half. I'm probably more in the, well, honestly, all the times that this gets brought up, I keep on going back to Leonard not playing over Rivers. I'm like, the Riley Leonard knee injury, it turned out to be one of the bigger stories of the year. It's all of a sudden he comes in and tells him he's got a knee injury, then he's a full participant on Wednesday of practice. So I'm like, which, you and I had this debate back when that happened. It's if your starting quarterback is a full participant on a Wednesday in practice, he plays.
Right.
If he's a full participant on Friday in practice, he plays.
Yeah.
And he was bypassed for Uncle Phil.
This is a good one from Tom. Looking at the teams who made it far into the playoffs this year, Tom was wondering which teams have paths or made specific moves that could be, quote, replicated by the Colts.
Yeah, again, New England did a lot in the free agency money. Now, remember, Eddie, they're doing the rookie contract quarterback thing.
Yep.
Which the Colts are about to not be doing. They took a chance on Diggs coming off the ACL, but they took a lot of front seven free agency money. And, I'll go back to the Craig Woodson thing. That was a 4th-round pick leading them in defensive snaps. That's pretty unprecedented. I want to say I think they had another day 2 pick on their O-line. Granted, probably not a good time to talk about their O-line, but, some of that draft hitting is what the Colts are going to need to do. And then again, Seattle, they obviously, Murphy was a high draft pick. Obviously, Witherspoon was a high draft pick defensively, but they also did a lot of that building outside of the draft. Boy, I found myself last week thinking about, do you remember when the Colts played the Patriots?
Which time?
Well, yeah, exactly. With Richardson last year.
Yeah.
Or I guess 2 years ago at this point. And Richardson leads them on that late drive. You remember that? That 19-play drive. He had all those 4th down conversions. Finds Pierce on the 4th down for the touchdown and then runs it in for the 2-point conversion.
Yep.
19 play, 80-yard game-winning touchdown drive.
2 4th downs, right?
I thought there might have been 3. I think he had one to Allie Cox early in the drive just to kind of get it going, backed up. And then I want to say he had one that he made with his legs, and then he had the Pierce touchdown. It just, it's wild that game, I think it was a December game, if memory serves. And Drake May was very good in that game, to be fair.
December 1st.
Was it?
Yeah.
Here we are, Eddie, 14 months later. Drake May was 1 vote short of winning the MVP, and you would trade Anthony Richardson for, a bag of Cool Ranch and nacho cheese Doritos.
3 4th downs on that.
What's better, Cool Ranch or nacho cheese?
Nacho cheese.
Is it close? It didn't sound close in your eyes.
No, it's not close.
I mean, I love Doritos. Love them. Max Bone calls them burritos. I could go either. Cool Ranch has really grown on me. And by grown, I mean it was never bad, but it's even more.
You just have a newfound respect.
Oh, so much. Just love it. I want to make that seasoning in my kitchen.
I think they sell it in stores, maybe.
Really?
I don't know. I'd have to.
That was a tease. You can't just do that. You got to be. If you're going to come with that, you better be confident.
Final question is from Walter.
That's sick. If you're wrong.
Walter says, "I would love to have Daniel Jones back, but at the same time, where do you think the cutoff is for salary and years? I wouldn't want to overpay him, and we lose out on some of our other free agents like Nick Cross or Alec Pierce. I get he had an awesome first 8 games, but at the same time, he has a career that has been up and down in play and has been injured frequently. He has had 1 season that he's able to play all 16 games. Now, we knock Anthony Richardson in his 3 years on the team for injuries, but Daniel Jones is no stranger to missing games as well. To sum it all up, what number do you think would prompt Ballard and Carly Ursay-Gordon to just let him walk? And if they did, who would you like for them to pursue? It's a long shot, but if the Texans let him walk, I'd like CJ Stroud.
Oh boy, Walter, I think there's a better chance of you walking to Houston than CJ Stroud.
Well, we shouldn't say that. You don't know where Walter's from.
Well, yeah, he
could be sending this question from Houston.
He could be from whatever the burger place is called down there, and he could walk all over to NRG Stadium. I don't know. What are we saying? 3 for $100?
I think that's what we talked about last week. Because that was the Baker Mayfield deal, maybe.
I think the length of the contract will be something obviously I'm curious about. Where's the 2 to 3 years? I brought up Minnesota on last week's pod. How much, if any, are they an actual threat? If he walks, what would you do? I mean, what's the list? Rodgers, Willis, Malik Willis, that is, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins. Did I see he's about to be released?
That is correct, yes.
Gosh. You call Rivers back?
Oh, gosh. He made it sound like he was done.
You imagine? Boy, if he walks, I got no idea. Walter, I got no idea. I mean, part of me would say just, throw Richardson out there. If it goes disaster, you don't have your first round pick. I forgot about that. Yeah, I'm probably at a threshold of 3 for $100. I don't want 3 for $100. I'm probably more in the 2 camp. I'm probably more in the 2 for whatever. If you want to go, what was that, 35 annually, something like that, 33 annually. Franchise tag is 46. To me, the franchise tag is so rich for 1 year when he might not be himself for some of that year. I don't want to play that game. And I can hear other people that say, hey, if you do 2, then all of a sudden he, whatever, kind of quickly, if he starts to play well, then you're going to pay him real money, whatever, more the 4 or 5 year route. To me, a good problem to have. And at that point, your first round pick is back on the table. If you do the 2 years and he's struggling or whatever, or you don't want to continue it, then you've got the first round pick. So that's probably where I would go. But boy, it just seems like not the Colts have backed themselves into a corner, but again, I'll continue to reiterate this, Eddie. Publicly, I mean, these two have expressed their love like the junior high couple that's making out during the passing period.
What?
Do you ever have those people? Like, I mean, they're like openly kissing in the hallway.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I was always like, damn, my God. Clearly, that's not me.
It wasn't?
But if it was, like, yeah, I don't know. They call it PDA, right? Public displays of affection.
Yes.
I'm not a big PDA-er.
Really?
Are you?
No. Okay. Have you seen this, by the way?
Should we end the pod?
I want to get this in here. Have you seen the date for next year's Super Bowl?
Oh, boy.
Pray for you men out there.
Don't say it to me. Well, we got the lottery, the NBA draft lottery on Mother's Day.
The Super Bowl next year on Valentine's Day.
I mean, Mother's Day and Valentine's Day.
The next day is President's Day.
I mean, think about that. Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. What are we doing? It's just unbelievable. Did I say we have no shows next Monday because of President's Day? Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Has that always been a thing?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So next week will be what, Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay. So look for the pod coming up next Tuesday. He is Eddie Garrison.
Evaluating Shane Steichen, right?
Evaluating Shane Steichen, and I believe that is the opening of the franchise tag window. 2-week period. So, but yeah, that'll be next on the horizon here. So we'll see all the ducks in the order from a head coaching staff for Clinton Kubiak and company, and exactly if there's any more lingering. I guess the Colts still need to announce what their D-line coach situation is and some of that stuff. So we'll hit on that and start to look ahead to the NFL Combine. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great, great week. Thank you for listening to Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen.